Hey, greetings, family. Pastor Jamal here. Pray everybody's doing good today. Let's jump right on in. So I had something happen last week. I think I was just thinking or studying or I might have been watching TV. I don't know what I was going on, what I was doing, but I saw a quick little flash of an image in my mind, and the image it was a head, and going around the head was these images, and I knew that the Lord was saying. This is one of the problems. This is one of the problems because we're still trying to figure out God. We're still trying to figure out what God is saying, what God is doing, how God is moving, but we're trying to do it according to our own understanding, our own desired experience. You know what I'm saying? We have these prayers that we're throwing up, to God, and we have these desires that are just bubbling up within us, and we want God to answer, rightfully so. You know what I mean? It's not that things are so unrighteous, but we have them. So we have them, and we are trying to get them answered. Where we're trying to see what's going on. So as a result of that, we're coming up with a lot of ideas that are kind of contrary to the flow of God per se. So I just want to read a scripture really, really fast. This is, what is this? Romans 12. So this is just Romans 12, 1 and 2. And it says, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. I think some says just your reasonable service per se. Then 2 says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So actually 2 is one of the mandates for Rising Ground Church. That's one of my favorite scriptures is to, do not conform to the pattern of the world, but be ye transformed. But let's go back here. It says, 1 again says, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. So what does that mean? What does that mean in light of this whole moment? God is a moving God. God is all wise. God is all knowing. And God knows that the propensity that men have is to latch on to something, to patent something. I think that's the word, patent something. We are creatures of habit. So some say we are creatures of worship. Meaning we are always looking for something to worship, with which God should be the only thing. But because everybody don't understand and doesn't know God and doesn't serve God, then we're going to find something to latch on to so that we could worship it. And another way to understand worship just means a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that you have decided to adopt to make your personality to make legal for you. Some of you make going to the gym a worship. Some of you make work worship. So there is this lifestyle that we have involved ourselves in a specific way that turns out to be worship. So we are creatures that are worship. We just latch on to a lot of different things. So God is saying, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. So when we understand that God is saying that because God knows all things and God is sovereign, that means God can move according to what he knows, his movements, as far as we're concerned, to really need. So meaning God knows that if he stays in one position for too long, we're going to latch on to it and we're going to create an idol out of it. And we're not going to be able to be positioned in a way that is beneficial for all parties. I hope that made sense. And if it doesn't, it will. So And this is holy and pleasing to God. This is set apart. Holy is set apart. So the world has a tendency to latch on to a lot of different ideas and a lot of different things, trying to understand something that they can understand from a particular position, but because we are not God, we're not going to be able to understand things the way that we want to. But being a living sacrifice is just saying that I am intentionally living this way, because we do have a will. We can decide not to live as living sacrifices, but in order to please God, we know and understand that living as a living sacrifice means that we're going to flow with God. There's not necessarily a true destination, or you could say the destination is simply to flow with God in all types, in all ways, in all seasons, in all means. We flow with God, the divine flow, so that we can be positioned the way that God needs us to for the work that God has us here for. So in saying that, the next verse is, so don't conform again to the patterns. Don't conform yourself to the patterns of this world. What are the world's patterns again? The image was this head, and swirling around this head was all of these ideas. We kind of modify God's purposes. So that's one pattern that the world has it's so dangerous. We're trying to modify God's design because we don't understand it. And when we modify God's design, we kick ourselves right out of a firm foundation. We kick ourselves right out of being able to test and approve, what God's will is. So approving and testing what God's will is should produce a manifestation. It should produce a result that God not only, purposed, but you actually want to see. So being able to test and prove God is completely linked up to being able to not be conformed by the patterns of the world, but being able to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I'm going to tell you this, transformed, let's look at it kind of simply. Transformed, it didn't say being transformed was going to be one thing. So I'm going to be transformed into this one thing, and that's it. Now, that's a gray area, because the Bible does say we're being transformed into the image of Christ. Now, I will say, does that mean that is a solid place? I think what God is trying to let us know is to being transformed into the image of Christ is something that's going to happen and happen and happen and happen. And eventually, when it's time for us to be to come into the new heaven and the new earth per se, we will be solidified in the image that we were working towards. I hope that makes sense, that we were working towards. So as we obey God, as we move with God, as we flow with God, as we allow ourselves to be conformed to God's process, which is being transformed by the renewing of the mind, just means a constant renovation. So as we move with God, our houses are being renovated. We move again, our houses are being renovated. And when I mean our house, I mean our spirit, our mind, soul, our spirit and our soul, our mind, will, and emotions, our intellect, and our intent. They're always being renovated as God moves us to different locations in the spiritual world, because that's how we are being transformed. So when we want to answer prayer, when we want to see the prophetic words that God has spoken over us, we have to be courageous and understanding enough to say, in order to get here, I'm required to do this. I am required to be to have my mind renewed constantly. I'm required to move in divine flow, so that as I'm being transformed into the image, eventually I will be that thing, because I've made the necessary processes. I've not only been involved in them, I've agreed with them, I've worked with them, and I've done what God has asked me to do. So in that holiness, I'm pleasing God, and I am being. I'm being is another word that I want to use. I'm becoming capable of experiencing the finished work of Christ here on earth. So that just means answer prayer. That just means deliberate authority and power. I'm able to see who I am in God as I'm moving in the processes, as I'm moving in divine flow with God. Whew! I pray that makes sense, people. So let it sink in if you need to, if you know it, rejoice with it, fortify it, stand on it, be with it, and watch God do extraordinary things with you, in you, and through you again. I'll talk to you, Pastor Jamal, Rising Ground Church. Peace.